Okay. Well, before going to module 3, we'll just elaborate on the concepts what we have understood in module 1 and module 2. Students, am I audible? Can you see the slide? Can anyone reply yes, sir, so that I can continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, ma. So once again, I welcome all of you. Very good morning to all of you. As in the previous class, we discussed in module 1 and module 2, that was introduction to leadership, wherein we identified the roles of a leader. Then we even understood about the leadership theory paradigms, then levels of analysis of leadership theory. Wherein in unit 2, we discussed majorly about the personality traits and leadership, then traits of effective leaders. Then we majorly understood about ethics. So, how important is ethics when we speak about leadership? Then we understood about the achievement motivation theory. Well, now in unit 3, we majorly concentrate on the leadership behavior and what motivates a leader to take decisions. So, in the first part, please see the slide over there. We'll majorly understand only about the leadership behavior and styles. See, all the materials, whatever I have put in this particular units, these are from the textbook Lucier, which is a recommended book from your university. Well, this is one of the lengthiest module what we have. So I have prepared close to 67 slides. So it will take couple of sessions to complete this module, but we'll try to understand in depth about the leadership behavior and the styles. So before going to this particular module, we'll try to understand what is leadership behavior. Students, by the late 1940s, most of the leadership research had shifted from the trait theory paradigm to the behavioral theory paradigm, which focuses on what the leader says and does. So, although students, the behavioral leadership theory made major contribution to the leadership research, which we'll be discussing today, unfortunately, no leadership behaviors were found to be, consistently associated with leadership effectiveness. Today, research continues to seek a better understanding of behavior. So, this is very important to understand the behavior of a leader. So, whom we consider as a leader, what will be his behavior, right? Now, leadership behavior, please see the slide over there, is majorly based on traits. So, although the behavioral theorists focus on behavior, it's very important to realize that leaders' behavior is based on their traits as well as skills. Correct? So, a good predictor of employee retention is the relationship between the manager and the employee. So, we can say that employees who have good relationship with their boss are more likely to be motivated than workers with a poor relationship with their managers who are more likely to quit. So, very important, students. The relationship is based on what? The manager's leadership, personality traits, and attitudes, which directly affect his or her behavior with the employee. So, it is very important to managers. In fact, as Albert Einstein said, setting an example is not the main means of influencing another. It is the only means. Leading by example takes place as followers observe the leader's behavior and try to replicate it or copy it. And the leader's behavior is majorly based on his or her traits. So, students, traits and behavior, they always go hand in hand. Or trait leadership theory influences behavioral leadership theory. So, what we say is the manager's leadership personality traits and attitudes it will directly affect his or her behavior and the relationship with the employees. See, when we are reporting to a boss, and if you have a good relationship, or if the leader is creating a positive environment for working over there, or if the employees are feeling very safe with the manager to whom they are reporting or the leader to whom they are reporting, then obviously where is the question of quitting? So you are very comfortable with the manager to whom, with the leader to whom you are reporting, right? So what we have to understand is employees who have a good relationship with their leader or with their boss or whomever they are reporting are more likely to be motivated than workers with a poor relationship with the manager, who are more likely to quit. So some of the major studies, so when we speak about the major studies, I am directly speaking about the literature review here of University of Michigan and Ohio State University studies. So what is the outcome of their studies? We'll try to understand that. See, leadership, that too in leadership style is the combination of traits, the skills, and even the behavior leader use as they interact with the followers. So leadership research was majorly conducted at Ohio State and the University of Michigan at about the same time during the mid 1940s to mid 1950s. That means a decade time. So these studies were not based on prior autocratic and democratic leadership styles, but rather sought to determine the behavior of effective leaders. So although these two studies use the term leadership behavior rather than leadership styles, the behaviors identified are actually more commonly called leadership styles today. So when we speak about students' autocratic leadership style, so whom do you call autocratic leader? The autocratic leader makes the decisions, tells the employees what to do, and closely supervises the workers. That means majorly he dictates the work and get it done from the employees or his subordinates. Whereas the democratic leadership style, it is much like a participative style, right? See, the democratic leader encourages participation in taking decisions. He works with employees to determine what to do and does not closely supervise the employees. So the autocratic and the democratic leadership styles are often used at the opposite ends of a continuum. So thus, students, please understand, a leader's style usually falls somewhere between the two styles, that is autocratic or democratic. So the lower studies contributed to the behavioral movement and led to an era of behavioral rather than triad research. So some of the major outcome of the studies of Michigan and Ohio State Universities told that these two studies done by the universities use the term leadership behavior rather than leadership styles. So the behaviors identified are actually, more commonly called leadership styles today. So the University of Michigan, Michigan's Survey Research Center, under the principal direction of Rensis Likert, conducted studies to determine the leadership effectiveness. Students, what I'm trying to tell you is, we are understanding the leadership behavior based on the literature review done by University of Michigan, okay, which was job-centered and employee-centered behavior. So researchers, what they done was, they created a questionnaire called Survey of Organizations and conducted interviews to gather the data on leadership styles. So their goals were, so what were the major goals of the study? Please note that. So classify the leaders as effective and ineffective by comparing the behavior of leaders from high producing units and low producing units. So these were some of the goals. And the second goal was to determine the reasons for effective leadership. So here the researchers identified two styles of leadership behavior. Please understand, which they called job centered and employee centered. The U of Michigan model stated that a leader is either more job centered or more employee centered. So the University of Michigan leadership model thus identifies two leadership styles. I'm repeating once again. The University of Michigan leadership model identifies two leadership styles. One was related to job centered and the second one was employee centered. So please, we will try to understand what do you mean by job centered and employee centered. So first I will take a job centered leadership style. See, the job centered style has scales measuring two job oriented behaviors of goal, which emphasis and work facilitation. The job centered behavior refers to the extent to which the leader takes the charge to get the job done. So please understand, the leader closely directs subordinates. I'm repeating, the leader closely directs the subordinates with the clear roles and goals, while the manager tells them what to do and how to do it as they work toward the goal achievement. So what happens in case of job-centered leadership style, students? So the leader here, he closely directs his subordinates with the clear roles and goals. That means in order to complete a particular project, what has to be done, which path has to be taken, in which direction it has to be done. So he will clearly identify the roles. Okay, if there is a 10-member team, means he'll be telling, okay, these two will be playing the role of executing, these two will be playing the role of analyzing, the another two will be playing the role of verifying. So something like that, he'll be clearly defining the roles and what has to be completed and when has to be completed. That means he'll be giving the goals. Who will be giving? The manager will be giving the goals to his subordinates, while the manager tells them what to do and how to do, as if they work toward a goal achievement, which is very centered. That is job-centered leadership style, what we are discussing in the first. And the second one, what we'll be discussing now is employee-centered leadership style. So here, the employee-centered leadership style has scales measuring two employee-oriented behaviors of supportive leadership and interaction facilitation. So employee-centered behavior refers to the extent to which the leader focuses on meeting the human needs of employees while developing relationships. The leader is sensitive to subordinates and communicates to develop trust. Please understand, I'm repeating once again, the leader is sensitive to subordinates and communicates to develop trust, support, and even the respect while looking out for their welfare. So employee-centered means what? The leader is majorly concerned about the employee trust. A leader is majorly concerned about the support to be provided for all the people who are working. And a leader is majorly concerned about the respect for the subordinates. And he majorly takes care of the welfare of all the employees. So that is what we speak about the job-centered as well as the employee-centered leadership style. Next, that was about the Michigan State University. Now we'll come to Ohio State University, which speaks about initiating the structure and the consideration behavior. See, the Personal Research Board of Ohio State University, under the principal direction of Ralph Stockdill, began a study to determine effective leadership styles. So in the attempt to measure the leadership styles, students, what I'm trying to explain you is, as in the project, how you have done the literature review before going for your understanding about the statement of the problem. Here, before understanding the topic, we will just do a literature review, which was majorly done by the Michigan University as well as the Ohio State University resource people, right? So in the attempt to measure leadership styles, the researchers developed an instrument known as LBDQ. I'm repeating, LBDQ, which is a leader behavior description questionnaire. Well, what do you mean by LBDQ here? The LBDQ has 150 examples of definite leader behaviors, which were narrowed down from 1,800 leadership functions. So respondents to the questionnaire perceived their leaders' behavior toward them on two distinct dimensions or leadership styles, which they called initiating structure and consideration. We'll try to understand this Ohio State University, that is initiating structure and consideration behavior. What they did was, the initiating structure leadership style is essentially the same as job centered leadership style, which focuses on getting the task done. I'm repeating once again, students. The initiating structure behavior leadership style is essentially the same as the job centered leadership style, which focuses on what? On getting the task done. And then we even spoke about the consideration behavior. So what do you mean by consideration behavior here? The consideration leadership style is essentially the same as the employee-centered leadership style, which focuses on meeting people's needs and even developing the relationship. So we'll try to elaborate on this Ohio State University, that is initiating structure and consideration behavior. So because a leader can be a high or a low on initiating structure and or consideration, four leadership styles are developed. The Ohio State University leadership model identifies four leadership styles. So based on the study done by the Ohio State University, they have come up with four leadership styles. So please see the slide over there. The Ohio State University leadership model identifies four leadership styles, which are the low structure and high consideration. So we'll try to understand each one, students. Then high structure and high consideration, low structure and low consideration, and high structure and low consideration. So we'll try to understand with the help of this matrix here. Students, please concentrate with this matrix. So when I say leaders with high structure and low consideration behavior use one-way communication. I'm repeating once again. Leaders with high structure. See here, I'm starting from x-axis. This is x-axis, horizontal line, and this is y-axis. That is a vertical line. Okay, I'm starting from this. So leaders with high structure. See my cursor over there. High structure and low consideration. They use one-way communication, and the decisions are made by the managers. Whereas leaders with high consideration and low structure, see, when I say high consideration and low structure, exactly the opposite in the matrix here. See here, I'm speaking about this part, high consideration and low structure. The managers or the leaders, they use two-way communication and tend to share decision making. So this particular box here, okay. So we will try to understand. See, we can see here high structure and low consideration. They use one-way communication, and the decisions are made by the managers. Whereas the exactly low structure, converse to this, and high consideration, they will obviously use two-way communication and tend to share a decision making. Correct? So here, the Ohio State University of Michigan leadership models are different in that university. It is completely different compared to the study what was made by the University of Michigan. Correct? The Ohio State University and the University of Michigan leadership models are totally different in that the University of Michigan, they places the two leadership behaviors at opposite ends of the same continuum. Which are they? Yeah? Anybody? The University of Michigan, just now we discussed here the outcome of that. Please see the slide over there. University of Michigan, just now we discussed. Job-centered leadership style as well as employee-centered leadership style. Correct? Whereas, what happened in case of Ohio State? The Ohio State University model considers the two behaviors independent of one another, making it two-dimensional. Thus, this model has four leadership styles. Which one? Ohio State University. The two leadership behaviors on which the models of both the universities are based have strong research support. So, leadership behaviors were developed and repeatedly tested using statistical factor analysis to narrow the dimensions down to structure or job oriented, that is, structure or job centered, or and consideration or employee centered. So here we majorly understood about the LBDQ, which speak about the leader behavior description questionnaire, LBDQ, and the modified versions have been used in hundreds of studies by many different researchers. So another important research finding was that most leadership functions can be carried out by someone beside the designated leader of the group. Thus, due to behavioral leadership research, more organizations began training managers to use participative leadership styles. Correct? So many of the organizations, they began training managers to use the participative. So when we speak about the participative leadership style, so the decision will be taken by both managers or the leaders and as well as the employees here. That means everybody will participate. So when they participate, what happens is even they feel that they are important in making the decisions. Correct? So thus, as a third contribution of these leadership models, Likert can be credited as being the first to identify the participative leadership style that is commonly used today. I'm repeating once again. A third contribution of these leadership models, Likert can be credited as being the first to identify the participative leadership style that is commonly used today. Now, in the next slide, we'll majorly understand about the leadership grid theory. Students, which two universities did the research? Can anyone tell the name of the university? Just now we have discussed. A quick question.
Sir, the Ohio University and the Mexican University.
That is very great, Yashaswini. That means all are listening.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, ma. So let me continue with the next slide over there, the leadership grid theory. So what is this leadership grid theory? Please understand. We'll majorly discuss about the leadership grid theory, which includes the research and the contribution of high concern for people and even high concern for production. So leadership grid theory majorly, Robert Blake and Jane Mountain from the University of Texas developed the managerial grid, and it was published in 1964. And it was updated in the year 1978 and 1985. And in 1991, it became the leadership grid. See, students, for an exact outcome, how many years it will take? It will take more than 5 decades here. 1964, then it was updated in 1978, and then 1985, and finally in 1991. See, it is based on the same two leadership dimensions. So the leadership grid, based on the same two leadership dimensions. When I say the same two leadership dimensions, which Blake and Mountain called concern for production and concern for people. The concern for both people and production is measured through a questionnaire on a scale from 1 to 9. Therefore, I'll show you the grid also. The grid has 81 possible combinations of concern for production and people. So here, however, the leadership grid identifies 5 leadership styles. So, which is improvised, authority compliance, country club, middle of the road, team leader. So we'll try to understand each one of them in detail. So this is the Blake Mountain and McInnes leadership grid. So what we'll try to understand here is the improvised leader, that is 1,1. See here. See, on the horizontal axis here, we are seeing in the x-axis. So we have concern for production, which we have plotted in the horizontal, that is x-axis. And in the y-axis, we have concern for people. So we call it as a Blake Mountain and McInnes leadership grid. So on the x-axis, we have to understand that we have concern for production. And on the y-axis, we have concern for people. And the improvised impoverished leader, that is 1,1. Please understand, see my cursor here. 1,1 has low concern for both production as well as people. So the leader does the minimum required to remain employed in the position. Please understand, this grid is very, very important. Okay. So when I say 1,1, so in both the cases, concern for production is also 1 and concern for people is also 1. So the leader, what happens here? He does the minimum required. He's just bothered about his employment. So the leader does the minimum required to remain employed in the position. Then we will discuss about 9,1. What is that? Authority compliance leader, 9,1. Please see my cursor here. So these type, they have a high concern for production and a low concern for people. The leader majorly focuses here 9,1 on getting the job done as people are treated like machines. Because the manager here is concerned about the output rather than people. He is majorly concerned about the production output. He is least bothered about people. So in this grid, we call it as 9,1, which is called as authority compliance leader. I'm repeating once again, authority compliance leader. In this position 1,1, we call it as impoverished leader. Okay, impoverished leader, and here it is authority compliance leader. Then we have the country club leader here 1,9. Please see my cursor here 1,9. Okay, authority club leader, which has a high concern for people and a low concern for production. Here, what do you mean by high concern for people? The leader strives to maintain a friendly atmosphere without regard for production. He always creates a very friendly environment. He's worried about the people's welfare. He's worried about the people's safety rather than output. Right? Then we have here middle 5,5. Middle of the road leader. We call him as middle of the road leader. He has a balanced medium concern, which is exactly in the middle of this particular leadership grid. He is a balanced medium concern for both production and people. The leader strives to maintain satisfactory performance and morale. This 5,5. Okay. See, when I say 5 comma 5, you can see here, students, exactly in this middle. See, when I plot a graph, exactly here. So concern for production is also balanced, and concern for people is also balanced. And very important, see a team leader. We call it TL, team leader. See my cursor, 9 comma 9. Okay. So here, this type of leader will be having a high concern for both production. See here, when I plot a graph, it is high, both 9 comma 9. That means he has a high concern for both production and people. And this leader strives for maximum performance and employee satisfaction. So according to Blake, Mountain, and McInnes, the team leadership style is generally the most appropriate for all of us in situation, which is 9 comma 9 in the grid. So this is about Blake, Mountain, and McInnes leadership grid, which is very important from even from the practical point of view, that is even from the examination point of view. So I have explained all this type of leader here in the next slide. The impoverished leader, which we saw 1 comma 1, right here, 1 comma 1. Then we have the authority compliance leader, we call it as 9 comma 1. So when we speak about 9 comma 1, it is here. 9 in the sense which is x-axis, and 1 is in the y-axis. So 9 is what? High concern for production. 1 is what? A very low concern for the people. So we have to understand. So each one is like x and y, okay? Then we have the country club leader, that is 1 comma 9, and the middle of the road leader, which is exactly in the middle of that particular grid, that is 5 comma 5, and the team leader, which is 9 comma 9. So that is how this particular grid should be understood. Then leadership and major motivation theories. So we'll try to understand, we'll discuss the motivation and leadership, the motivation process, and the 3 classifications of motivation theories also we'll try to understand here, which is a content, process, and reinforcement. First, we'll try to understand motivation means what? What motivates anybody? That is very important. So motivation is defined, or it is anything that affects behavior in pursuing a certain outcome. So motivation is a quest for personal gain. Motivating others, please understand, students, motivating others is very difficult and time consuming because you need to motivate each follower on a personal basis. See, you can motivate yourself, but see, for example, if you are a team leader and 10 of them are reporting to you, how do you motivate each one of them? Because everybody's motive is different, correct? As a leader, how do you motivate each one of them? So motivation is anything that affects behavior in pursuing a certain outcome. So motivation is a quest for personal gain. So here in this particular section, we will try to understand the motivation process. So motivating others is very difficult and time consuming because you need to motivate each follower on a personal basis. So thus the ability to motivate yourself and others is very critical to you to become a leader. So we will try to understand the motivation process in this particular section. So although the motivation, through the motivation process, people go from need to motive to behavior to consequence to satisfaction or dissatisfaction. For example, students, let me tell a small, anecdote. You are thirsty. I'm repeating, you are thirsty. That means what? That is your need. And have to drive, that is motive to get a drink. So you get a drink, that is a behavior that quenches, that is a consequence and the satisfaction of your thirst. However, students, if you could not get a drink or a drink of what you really wanted, what happens? You will be dissatisfied. So satisfaction is usually short-lived. Getting that drink satisfied you, but sooner or later you will need another drink. For this reason, the motivation process has a feedback loop. Please see here the feedback loop, all of you. First, your need is what? Need is what? You are thirsty. So you have a drive to get a drink. That is your motive. Please see my cursor. That is your motive. And then you get a drink. That is a behavior. That quenches, that is a consequence and satisfaction your thirst. And after a certain time, you are again dissatisfied. That means this is called as a feedback loop. For this reason, the motivation process has a feedback loop. Some need or want motivates all behavior. So we are always motivated by our self-interest. However, needs and motives are complex. I'm repeating once again. Needs and motives are always complex. We don't always know what our needs are or why we do the things we do. Understanding your needs will help you to do better understand motivation and behavior. Like traits, what we understood, students, motives cannot be observed, but you can observe your behavior and infer what the person motive is. So we will try to understand the first motivation theory, which is very important, which is called as content motivation theory. So we'll try to understand this content motivation theory, students. It focuses on explaining and predicting behavior based on people's needs. Now, what do you mean by people's need? The primary reason people do what they do is to meet their needs or wants to be satisfied. So people want job satisfaction and they will leave one organization for another to meet their need, right? So some will quit the organization because of the monetary benefit. Some will quit the organization because of the working environment. Some will quit the organization because to whom they're reporting they're not comfortable, or some will quit the organization because they feel that they're not safe in the organization, right? So the primary reason people do what they do is to meet their needs or wants to be satisfied. So people, they want majorly job satisfaction and they leave one organization for another to meet this need. So an employee who has job satisfaction usually has a higher level of motivation and is more productive than a dissatisfied employee, correct? So according to content motivation theorists, if you want to have satisfied employees, you must meet their needs. That is very important. So it is very important to understand the needs. That is what about content motivation theory speaks about. So people want job satisfaction and they will leave one organization for another to meet their need. When employees are asked to meet the objectives, they have question, although usually not asked, right? When we'll understand the hierarchy of needs theory, students in 1940s, Abraham Maslow, he developed his hierarchy of needs theory, which is based on 4 major assumptions. So we'll try to understand the first assumption, which speaks about the psychological needs. The second one speaks about the safety needs. The third one, which speaks about the belongingness needs. And the fourth one, which speaks about the esteem needs. And the last but not the least, we speak about the self-actualization needs. So first, we'll try to understand the psychological needs. What we are discussing now, we're discussing hierarchy of needs. The hierarchy of needs theory proposes that people are motivated through 5 levels of needs, which is basically, I'll explain you each needs now: psychological, safety, belongingness, esteem, and self-actualization. So first, I'll be taking the psychological needs here. These are people's primary or basic needs, which includes air, food, shelter, sex, and even relief or avoidance of pain. So they're majorly, their needs are what? The primary or the basic needs. When we speak about the basic needs, it can be food, shelter, and clothing. Then the second type, which is safety needs. See, once the psychological needs are met, the individual is concerned with the safety and security. So if you are not safe in an environment, obviously you will be quitting that particular environment or the job if you feel that it is unsafe for you. Correct? Next, the third one is belongingness needs. See, after establishing the safety, people, even sometimes employees, even look for love, friendship, acceptance, and affection. So, belongingness is also called social needs. One small example I want to give you. A couple of years back, I met two employees. Also, both were friends earlier, but later they quarreled with each other. So one of the employee quit the organization because his or her friend is working in the same organization. Sir, I do not want to work in that environment, sir, where he or she is working. So people even look for love, friendship, and acceptance, and even affection in the working environment. If someone is speaking very rude to you in the organization, so you feel depressed, you totally quit the job, right? That is your third need, that is belongingness needs over there. And the fourth one, we speak about the esteem needs. So what do you mean by esteem here? So after the social needs are met, the individual focuses on the ego, status, self-respect, then recognition for accomplishments, and a feeling of self-confidence and prestige. See, in any working environment, students, if your ego is hurt, or if they're not valuing your words, or if they disrespect you, so sometimes employees even quit the organization because of these factors. They say, sir, there is no value for me, sir. So there is no value for my work over there. So they always disrespect employees over there, right? So these are some of the common reasons, or why even employee quit one organization and join some other organization, because primarily their ego is hurt. And the last but not the least, that is self actualization needs. So the highest level of need is to develop one's full potential. To do so, one seeks growth, achievement, and advancement. See, if there is no growth in your career, why do you work in that organization? So your potential should be observed, and suitable reward should be given. There should be a career growth in the coming years. Your work should be identified, your potential should be rewarded, otherwise you will be demotivated. So that is your fifth needs. Okay, so what we discussed now, the Maslow's work was criticized. It was really criticized because it did not take into consideration that people can be at different levels of needs based on different aspects of their lives. So this complete thing, that is Maslow's work, it was totally criticized because he did not mention that people can revert back to lower level needs. So today, in the present scenario, Maslow and others realized that needs are not on a simple 5-step hierarchy. Maslow's assumptions have recently been updated to reflect this insight, and many organizations today are using a variety of management methods which he proposed 30 years ago. See, Maslow has also been credited with influencing many management authors, including Douglas, McGregor, Rensselaer, and Peter Drucker. So these are something about the hierarchy of needs theory. Yeah, see the structure here, student. This is very, very important. So first was see the pyramid here, the pyramid-like structure, the psychological needs. So when we speak about the psychological needs, we speak about what? Organizations meet these needs through adequate salary, breaks, and even the working conditions, the basic needs when we speak about this. So in the pyramid, the foundation is what? The psychological needs. Then after that, the safety needs. See, organization meet these needs through safe working conditions, then salary increases to meet inflation, then job security, and even fringe benefits, which includes medical insurance or even sick pay pensions that protect the psychological needs. This is the second layer in this pyramid, safety needs, what we discussed in the earlier slide. Then we have exactly the social needs. So how do organizations fulfill these social needs? So organization meet these needs through the opportunity to interact with others, to be accepted, then to have friends. So which includes, I think all of you know by many of the multinational companies, they organize the weekend parties, they even organize sports events, they even organize small trips, picnics or tours. Why do they do that? Because they want employees to interact with each other, to have friends in the organization. Then esteem needs. So organization meet these needs through titles, the satisfaction of completing the job itself. Then merit pay. So sometimes a suitable incentives will be given to the employees who fulfill the particular task within the stipulated time. Right? So what we are understanding now, esteem needs. How do organizations today fulfill the esteem needs of the employees? Then participation in decision making and even the change for advancement. Then the last one, which is in the top of this particular pyramid, is self actualization needs. See, organizations meet these needs by the development of employee skills, the chance to be very creative, achievement and promotions, and the ability to have a complete control over their jobs. So a lot of advanced courses will be introduced to the employees so that they can take up these courses or certifications and move to the next level. Right. So in order to enhance their skills. So today, majority of the companies are providing the certification programs in order to enhance their skills so that they can move to the next level, so that their career growth is there. There'll be increase in the package. There'll be increase in their position. Right. So these are the various steps organizations will be following in order to meet the needs of the employees. Students, I'll stop here. I hope all of you have understood the concepts, whatever we have discussed. Okay. So I'll stop here. In the next class, I'll be continuing with two-factor theory. I hope all of you have understood. So thank you so much for your patience listening, students. Have a fantastic day ahead.
Thank you, sir.